Welcome to this segment, which will introduce you to our founders, the Sisters of St. Scholastica Monastery, to St. Benedict and St. Scholastica, our patrons, and will give you a quick look at the history of the sisters and the college.
When I drove up this hill, which was a lot different than the hill today, because the building we're sitting in was not here, Summers Hall was not here, all that was here was Tower Hall and straight across. So there were just trees and flowers, daisies, as you drove up that hill. And I have to be honest and say I fell in love with it. And when I went home from here, I knew this was going to be the place I spent the rest of my life if God was willing.
Mother Scholastica Kirst was one of the daughters of Peter and Anna Kirst. She entered the monastery at St. Gertrude's in Shakopee, which eventually had to close. When it closed, she was recommended to go to St. Benedict's Monastery in St. Joseph, Minnesota. So she entered there as well as her younger sister Alexia. In those days, it was customary for parents to give a dowry for their daughters. And the dowry which Peter and Anna Kirst gave to their daughters eventually enabled Mother Scholastica to buy the land that the college and the monastery are sitting on today, as well as the land that became the site for St. Mary's Hospital in Duluth. Mother Scholastica was visionary, and yet she was extremely practical. Only 4 years after she entered St. Benedict's, she became the prioress, and she was the prioress there for 9 years. And that's the time in which she was contacted by the Bishop of Duluth to come to Duluth and help to serve the people here.
So they came with a mission. They were called by the bishop, and therefore they believed by God to come here and to help in any way they could. And so we know for certain that this is the community that established College of St. Scholastica. But before that, they helped the Diocese of Duluth to establish elementary schools. They worked and helped get St. Mary's Hospital, now St. Mary's Medical Center, going on the road to becoming one of the best hospitals around.
So she founded St. Mary's in Duluth in 1888, and she began to found a series of schools here. Eventually, she decided to found her own monastic community. And so in 1892, the Sisters of St. Scholastica were founded, and she became the first prioress of the new community here.
I want to introduce you to my Benedictine family. This is not all of us. This was taken probably about 8 years ago. And at this time, some of the sisters weren't home for this picture, and some who are pictured in here are no longer with us. So right now we are a group of 73 sisters, with 5 women in the process of trying to figure out if they want to be a Benedictine sister. But when you look at this picture, I want you to think of 2 things. First of all, here's the Catholic Benedictine, part of the Catholic Benedictine piece. These are the women whose community began the college in 1912 and whose community is still here. The names have changed. Some faces are gone. But we are still here for you. We are still here praying every day and working side by side with you to help you achieve your goals.
Mother Scholastica, during the time that she was still prioress, had charged Sister Agnes Summers and Sister Catherine McCarthy with creating a plan and curriculum for the new college that she envisioned. But she didn't live to see that dream fulfilled. The college attained 4-year status in 1924, the year that Mother Agnes was elected prioress. Mother Agnes was prioress for almost as long as Mother Scholastica, for 18 years, and they were cut from the same mold. She finished Tower Hall in 1928 and added Stanbrook Hall and the chapel in 1938. So she undertook a major building program during the Depression, which was a really amazing feat. The great east window of the chapel is dedicated to Our Lady Queen of Peace, which is also the name of the chapel. And it was put into place in 1938 on the eve of World War II. The symbolism in the window speaks of peace and of outreach to all nations of the world. All of the windows she worked on with Emil Fry, a famous stained glass maker from St. Louis. Each of those windows tells a story in its own. So if you have a chance to take a look at the windows up close, you'll learn a lot about the saint and about our history as well. And you can see a number of beautiful emblems in the stained glass. Stars of David, wedding rings for St. Elizabeth of Hungary because she was a married saint, beautiful emblems from nature in the window of St. Kateri. So all of those windows are important. The 3 windows in the front of the chapel now have the original setting from the old chapel, which is blue and gold glass, representing the colors of the college. And those 3 saints are the 3 Benedictine saints, St. Gertrude, St. Scholastica, and St. Hildegard. And each of them is an important saint to us because of the fact that they were all Benedictines. St. Scholastica is represented with the Holy Rule, and she's blessing and teaching 2 of her nuns. In the 1980s, the college had a terrible time fitting everything it needed to fit in its library. And so a plan was devised under the guidance of Mother Grace Marie Brown to switch the spaces between the chapel and the library. The library used to be located on the first floor where the chapel is, and it just was not built to meet the needs of the growing college. The chapel was so large, didn't really need to be as large as it was for all of the sisters, and it presented a number of logistic problems for the sisters that had trouble getting up and down the stairs. When the chapel and the library switched, it was very consciously planned, and as much of the material from the chapel that was important to the sisters was moved to the chapel and things were reconfigured. For example, the altar was made of wood from the old chapel, and the carpenters built it specially and tooled it. And the angels that are in the altar now were in the old chapel on top of a canopy that was above the sanctuary called a baldacchino. When the angels were on the baldacchino, they looked very small, and everyone was surprised to find out that they stand almost 4 feet tall. So those angels were incorporated into the altar, and then 2 of the angels stand at the entrance to the monastery. Marble from the original chapel was taken downstairs as well. A number of things were built, including a Paschal candle stand to house the Paschal candle at Easter, and a beautiful 8-sided baptismal font was built to represent the 8th day, the new resurrection and a symbol of our eternal life. The Sisters of St. Scholastica Monastery are Benedictine. This means that we follow the rule and the tradition of St. Benedict, the founder of our order.
If you look at the end of that hall, these 2 statues are there. because they are, Scholastica and Benedict, are credited with being the founders of the Benedictine order of sisters and monks everywhere. And so we have them right at the entrance of our monastery to welcome anyone who wants to come and visit with us. So Benedict and Scholastica are brother and sister. Some people say they're twins, but some scholars don't agree with that. But regardless of that, they are siblings. They are brother and sister. And they were born in approximately year 480 in Norcia, Italy. And so we go back in our tradition more than 1,500 years. The rule of Benedict has influenced people for that many years. And of course, it's based on the scriptures, on the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures. You know, I always say that next to the Bible, this is my second Bible. Because this is my way of life based on the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because I'm a Catholic Christian. Therefore, it has to be based on Jesus' life. We do know that Benedict, as a young man, was sent to Rome to study, as young men were at that time, especially from well-to-do or wealthy families. And the young girls stayed at home to be educated. So Benedict went to school in Rome when he was a young man, probably still in high school, early college age. He became disillusioned with the culture of Rome. And if we studied history, we know that Rome was much in upheaval in those days. Everything was. Religion was in upheaval. The politics were. Society was going not well. And Benedict decided he really did not like his schooling. So he became a dropout. And he decided to seek a better life, a better way of living. So he became a hermit in a cave. And he stayed there for approximately 3 years. Now he met this young monk whose monastery was right on top of the hill where the cave was. And so the monk helped him by bringing him food and drink. But otherwise, Benedict stayed in there and prayed, became a very holy man, memorizing scripture, disciplining himself, and eventually, you know how word gets around? Not with texting in those days, but by word of mouth. And then people heard about it in the surrounding areas. They heard about him, so they decided to come and seek advice from him. And so a few years after that, after 3 years, he decided that maybe God wasn't calling him to be a hermit. Maybe he was calling him to go out and to help others to lead a value-centered life, because that's what he wanted. He wanted the values in his life to be directed toward the divine. And so he did. Now Scholastica, in the meantime, stayed in Norcia and was educated there. You'll notice they each have a staff, which shows that later on when they both had monasteries, groups of men and women who were joining them to live a life of prayer, of community together, and of service. These two were the heads of their communities. They were the leaders. So that staff is like a shepherd's staff. So they were to be the shepherd of their community and care for those who were a part of them and care for the people who came to seek help in whatever way. In the railings, in the iron railings going up from first floor to fourth floor are these medals. Every floor, the medal is embedded in the railing of both of the slate stairways. So the next time you go up one of those stairways, take a look. And our sisters put them there when Tower Hall was built because they wanted to remind us of our Catholic Benedictine heritage and of the fact that we are a Benedictine school. And therefore the values that we hold dear are before us at all times. If we see these medals, we'll remember that Benedict and Scholastica are calling us to do the right thing and to live out those values. So she wanted higher education. She wanted a building that looked like the buildings in Europe, and she wanted to offer higher education as well as elementary education. And I love that line that says, where she says, they will be built of stone, and within their walls, higher education will flourish. And here you and I are, 102 years later, in that building, in those buildings, that she had hoped would flourish beyond her own lifetime. And, you know, a dream, the tradition, this is what we call the tradition. It keeps going on and on. So it's not just back there, it's the present. It moves into the future. So you and I are part of the tradition now. And we carry her dream forward. The college carries her dream forward as we expand to Arizona, to online across the world, to the 5 extended sites. She would never have been able to imagine that this would ever happen. But we do go on, and we do the work that she was commissioned to do, and that we are also then sent to do.